we're coming through? So nobody has any idea what we said?
That's correct. Let's restart. Go.
All right, we're going to try this again. Let's rock and roll. Yeah, 12 minutes after 7 o'clock. Welcome to episode 3 of Talkin' Smack with Bob and Jack, midterm election edition. We're going to go wall-to-wall politics, wall-to-wall races, and wall-to-wall something crappy happening in Dayton tonight. And we're going to do the same thing on Wednesday when we react to what happens tomorrow. Jack Windsor, I'm Bob France, WHK Radio, AM 1320, The Answer, Always Right Radio, weekdays 9 to noon. Jack?
Jack Windsor, founder, editor-in-chief of the Ohio Press Network, and chief smack talker. Bob, last night we set our clocks back. Tomorrow night we take our country back.
We better. It's as simple as that. It really is. And, I've said this on the radio a lot, and I think I said it in episode 1 last Thursday, Jack. I'm going to stop pounding that table. I'm going to echo people out of here. This is literally taking the country back. It's not, a lot of people say we have to save our country. Our country is already gone. It has been taken over in the last 22 months. It was completely bastardized. It is no longer sovereign. We no longer have a southern border. We no longer have national security. We no longer have energy security. All of the things that this country was, doing so well on are gone. This is literally a fact. So it's not about saving it. It's already gone. It's about recapturing it. It's about literally like you said, taking it back. That is not an overstatement. And if we don't win this thing tomorrow, when I say we, I'm talking about conservative patriots. If we don't win this thing tomorrow, particularly in the Senate, we will never win another election again.
We may get into this when we analyze the election results, but for about 4 decades, the Republicans were really crowded out of the election process. And I would argue that for about 40 years, Americans were asleep at the wheel. They pulled a lever based on R or D. So it is about recapturing the country, but it's going to be a long-term recapture. This thing's going to have a long tail. It's not going to be, hey, on Tuesday, we're going to vote this way, and all of a sudden things are going to change. It's going to take quite some time to turn the ship around. But I think people are engaged. I think they're enraged, and I think that they're going to vote that way. And I think that there is a really long tail on this, and I genuinely mean that. It's not even about Republicans anymore. It's about identifying that there is a progressive movement, and the globalists and progressives permeate both parties, and frankly, the administrative state at the federal level and the state level. And that's all been laid wide open. And I think voters now are on a hunt. They're figuring out who's on that team, and how do we replace them at each individual level. So I think tomorrow's the beginning of that.
Yeah, it better be. Let's talk about the biggest race in Ohio that we've been looking at. And when I say biggest, I guess it's just because it's most high profile. I don't think it's any bigger than the Ohio Supreme Court races, in which Sharon Kennedy, Pat Fisher, and Pat DeWine must win their election. Who have not forgiven him for his Trump blasphemy back in 2016. And some are saying, he's not really a hardcore conservative. He's not hard. I don't trust him enough. And I may leave that blank. I wouldn't vote for Ryan, but I won't for Vance. And I think we've talked enough about that to say that's lunacy. It is dangerous, not just because Tim Ryan would be in the Senate, but because it's another one of the seats that would go in that direction and lead to what I just described. And according to what you've got some good news. I don't know where you got it, and I don't know how many of them are accurate, but give us some numbers.
Yeah, so real quick, I will say I think it's important to understand that J.D. Vance came out of a dogfight for a primary election. Tim Ryan had a cakewalk. And I think that what you saw show up in a lot of the polls early on were really angry Republicans because their guy or their girl did not get the primary nod. J.D. did. But look, Joe Biden is underwater, and Joe Biden is underwater in Ohio probably worse than anywhere else. And when push comes to shove and you go in that booth, you're not hitting the blue button. You're hitting the red button. So I think that, coupled by what Robert Cahaley of Trafalgar Group, I talked to him on Friday, he said there is a suppressed vote, Jack, and the suppressed vote is really consisting of people who are afraid to come out and tell a pollster, or afraid to go out on social media or tell anyone who they're going to vote for, because frankly, if they're angry parents, we know that the Justice Department is going to put a tag on them and put them in the FBI system if they get too raucous. And if they're MAGA, then they're already a threat to democracy, and why would they want to stick their neck out that way? So these numbers are really intriguing, Bob. We've talked on the radio several times. I've said J.D. Vance by 6, 8, and maybe double digits. But on Friday, after I talked to Trafalgar, 3 more polls dropped, and they had J.D. Vance by 6, 5, and 9. 4 more polls have dropped. Vance by 10, Vance by 10, Vance by 8, Vance by 5. If you go over to Real Clear Politics, I really like Real Clear, by the way, because they calibrate based on a bias in polls. Go ahead, Bob.
Oh, I just wanted to ask you, but we can do it after you give me Real Clear. I want to ask you about sample size, because so many of these are dropping, and I'm wondering, are these like 200-300 people? I know the Trafalgar one, I think, was like 1,100 people, which is a really good sample size, but I don't know about the others.
Yeah, and Trafalgar had about 1,100, and then their margin of error was about 2.3, I think. But when I look at Real Clear Politics, it has J.D. Vance, the Republican, up by 8. And when you add in their adjustments, they're actually showing Vance at 12.3.
Wow.
So a big double-digit lead. Now, that only counts if you vote. And I know we're going to get into this, which is, I think, entirely why you have 45 in Ohio tonight.
I talked to J.D. on my program this morning, and I told him I was equal parts concerned and inspired by the numbers. And I didn't have the last ones that you just said. I had Trafalgar, and I think it was Emerson, and big numbers. And I said that inspires me. It makes me feel good. It makes me believe that Ohioans are absolutely on the right track here. They know what they're doing. But I also said I'm worried because of what you just said. You have to go and vote. If people see big numbers, they think, oh, landslide, it's in the bag. I don't have to stand in line for an hour after work tomorrow to go vote. Or I don't have to make the time in my lunch or whenever I'm going to go vote tomorrow. I don't have to do it because, we got it now. And that is so dangerous because that's how upsets happen in football. That's how, seriously.
That may be almost what happened on Saturday near Chicago, although I would say 35-mile-per-hour winds.
Yeah, there was a lot of other things involved in that. But yeah, there's a reason why 3 touchdown underdogs somehow win, because the team that that is favored, they just don't take it seriously and think, oh, we got this. All we do is go through the motions. And if you think that, well, the red wave is other people voting, not me, and enough people think the same thing, guess what? Nobody goes and votes, and so you end up with egg on your face. So, but it's not just that, Jack. The reason I am a little worried about all of these big-time pro-Vance numbers is because if people think that and they don't go vote for Vance, we also then lose the votes for Kennedy and Fisher and DeWine and maybe Max Miller or maybe J.R. Majewski or maybe anybody else in Ohio in their districts who have very important ballots to cast for the judicial races or for the House races or what have you. Even state house races and state senate races.
State senate, those are massive races.
And issues 1 and 2, which we have to talk about. So if people think that, well, the biggest one is Vance is good, because, we've all been besieged by Tim Ryan ads since May. Literally since the primaries ended, he started.
He turned the spigot on. The national Democratic funding machine was turned on.
And my friend Hugh Hewitt said he kind of loves it, actually. And he's friendly with Tim Ryan because they both come from the same area. But he said he doesn't understand that in politics, any any TV ad run before Labor Day is wasted money.
It is.
It's absolutely a waste of money. And he spent so much money in May, in June, in July, in August, and all the way up until Labor Day in September. And I'm so tired of it. And now if people think, okay, J.D. Vance is going to win, if they don't go out there and prove it, all of those other votes are lost along with it.
That's a great point. And I would argue, though, that Tim Ryan had to spend that money, and he had to spend it early because he wasn't just campaigning, he was rebranding. Here's a guy who
he tried
absolutely loves increasing taxes, absolutely talked about law enforcement in a very negative light. And these are things that don't bode well in the state of Ohio, and they don't bode well in the state of Ohio in 2022. So he spent a ton of money. And, I talked to J.D. Vance, and if you remember, it was middle of the summer. Republicans are going, where's J.D. Vance? I don't see him on the TV. I don't hear him on the radio. What's he doing? And J.D.'s basically saying, look, I got to keep my powder dry here.
Right.
We have a limited number of dollars, and that happened, frankly, with with their predecessor. Rob Portman was outspent about 3-1. And so JD said, look, we're going to be really strategic. And when we go up on TV, we're going to go up on TV and we're going to tell the voters what a fraud Tim Ryan is.
Yeah.
And you know what JD Vance did? Exactly that. And
I think he did a great job of it. And by the way, I don't take anything for granted, and I like exposing frauds for what they are. Tim Ryan wants us to think, and I want to be too repetitive here, but he wants us to think that he's pro-cop, that he's pro-fracking, that he is pro some restrictions on abortion, but then when you pin him on it, he won't name one. All the way through.
He voted for the bill that would have allowed abortion up to the moment
of birth. Exactly. But to hear him say, "No, I just want to go back to what Roe was." Well, what was Roe? Roe was basically until birth, for crying out loud. But he opposes any restrictions whatsoever. In reality, let's do this. He wants you to think that he's tough on crime too. We've got a few pieces of video here, Bruce. I want to get Ryan 1 up here, and I want to. All you got to do to really realize what a fraud he is and how. And you know what I really hate is hypocrisy, and they're running ads calling J.D. Vance a fraud wearing a costume because he put on a flannel shirt instead of his Silicon Valley suit or whatever it is. Tim Ryan is the guy who's literally wearing a costume. He is a
elected president.
And this guy wants to try to rebrand himself as some sort of a Trump type of Republican. But this is who he really is. We're going to go back here, and this is what he had to say when he was running for president about crime in the nation.
Let's play it.
Elected president, will you commit to reducing the federal prison population by at least 50%?
I don't know if it's by 50% or not, but we want to get all the nonviolent criminals out, for sure. I'm all for it.
Okay, all right. You missed some of the video there, but you may have heard the audio. The audio said this is when he was asked about half of the prison population. And he said, I am for literally getting all nonviolent prisoners out of prison. Jack, violent criminals commit murders, homicides, assaults, burglaries, rapes. Nonviolent crimes would include things like dealing mountains of meth, dealing mountains of heroin or fentanyl or any other drug. Major drug dealers and cartel members aren't committing violence. Mm-hmm. If they're not stabbing people while they're making their deals, they're nonviolent criminals. He would set them free. Child pornographers, child pornography dealers, producers are nonviolent criminals. He would set them all free. That's who this guy really is, and his rebranding himself as being tough on crime, and I brought $500 million back to the state of Ohio for cops, and cops say it's impactful and so on. That's the fraud, and I think that's what, according to the numbers you're showing, that's what people are starting to realize.
I think it is what they're starting to realize, and he had a chance during the Fox News town hall last week. Martha McCallum really pushed back on him and referred to that clip. That clip's very clear. And she said, look, you definitely said all nonviolent. And he said, yeah, but in my mind, to me, I was talking about weed.
Yeah.
Here's the funny thing on that. Ready? So moments before that, he talked about, hey, here's what we have to do to get out of the mess we're in economically. You know, we got to lower taxes. Kid you not, 5 minutes later, he's talking about marijuana. What does he say? And we need to tax that marijuana.
Exactly.
And then we have to have a windfall tax on these manufacturers of oil. So it's really hard to rebrand yourself when everything that you stood for up to now is the exact opposite of what you're.
We've got one more clip here. This is Ryan 2. Bruce, see if you can cue up Ryan 2. And again, it has to do with crime, and it has to do with this no cash bail movement that is leading to spiking crime in every big blue city that has a soft on crime, Soros-funded DA and soft judges who are willing to let these people go right back out to the streets. Here's Ryan 2. Let's hear this one.
And we're seeing states end cash bail state by state. Would you support that nationally?
Yeah, I think the bail system is inherently unfair. And what it does is it sets people down a spiral of not being able to go to work, not being able to take care of the kids. Then you have adverse childhood experiences.
Trump at 7.
Okay.
There's another example, right? I mean, what did he just say there? What did you hear? Let me ask you
what he said was he thinks it's too hard on criminals' families to force them to put up cash for bail that they don't have. And so, this just nonsense idea. Well, first of all, what about the victims' families? What about the victims' families who are starving because you criminal, put them in the hospital, if not the grave. And he's all talking about, when you force these people to come up with cash bail and they don't have it, it just victimizes more people. Their kids grow up with mental issues and they're not there to provide for their family. Most criminals, particularly those in the big urban settings where the overwhelming majority of crime takes place, they don't have families they care about. They're in gangs, and that's the only family that they rely on. They're not feeding their kids. They're not even acknowledging that their kids exist, most of them, again. And this guy's talking about how cash bail is unfair. And Jack, you know what that ties us into and we have to talk about? Is issue one.
Issue one.
That is another one of the most, extraordinarily important things that is on this ballot.
So interestingly enough, again, going back to last week in this town hall meeting, Tim Ryan said, that's what I'm going to vote for. I'm going to vote for issue one. Isn't that interesting?
He's not voting for issue one when he literally said he was going to vote against cash bail, or he wants cash bail to be eliminated.
So a couple of people asked leading up to this show, what is issue one? What is a yes vote? What is a no vote? And my understanding after reading it, there are like, 3 triple negatives in there. It's really kind of hard to discern. But what issue one does is it eliminates a step that allows judges to consider public safety when setting bail. Now, after talking with someone a lot smarter than me involved in the judicial system, my understanding is that bail it keeps the person there for trial, right? But also there are public safety considerations. Now, before some case law came along that really made it hard for judges to consider public safety, that was part of the equation. Well, as it stands now, a prosecutor can file a motion asking the judge to consider such things as public safety when setting a bond. Issue one will circumvent that step. It will eliminate it, and it will say we're going to give judges the authority to consider that factor, and they don't have to wait on a motion. It's baked into determining bail. So public safety, and then making sure that the person's going to show for trial.
Yeah, I think it actually is a little stronger. I think it actually tells judges they must consider those things. What happened is the Supreme Court case, the Dubose case, and I talked to Justice Kennedy about this a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to be talking, by the way, again on Tuesday morning to all 3 of those justice candidates, Supreme Court justice candidate Sharon Kennedy, along with Associate Justices Fisher and DeWine, who are looking to keep their spots. I'm talking to all 3 of them at the same time. We're going to talk about issue one. We're going to talk, if you have any questions, anything you don't understand about it and about the importance of the Supreme Court, listen to that interview tomorrow morning. But having said that, the Dubose case, essentially, the defense attorney, there was a defendant who was accused of murder. He had a $1.5 million bond that was set. The defense attorney came out and challenged that and said, well, you can't do that much. He can't afford to put down 10% of $1.5 million. You should make it more reasonable. You should consider, he's not a flight risk. He's not going anywhere. So lo and behold, it gets appealed and so forth, and it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, when it was in its current iteration, as a matter of fact, led by a Republican but liberal progressive Chief Justice, Maureen O'Connor.
Yep.
They said, yeah, we agree. You just have to consider whether or not he's a flight risk, not the safety of the public and not his criminal defense or his criminal history. And so that decision by the Supreme Court, first of all, underscores how important it is for us to fix the court in terms of remaking it and putting Kennedy in the
Let's get back to that in a second, because that's very important.
But as it pertains to issue one, and this is what people need to know, issue one will, and I want you to listen to this, issue one will absolutely make it so that the judges consider public safety and witness safety, as well as the criminal defense record, along with being a flight risk. So that, Jack, if you're accused of murder and they give you a low bond, you can go out and you know full well most of the evidence they have against you is an eyewitness. Mm-hmm. What is the first thing you're going to do?
I don't think like a criminal, but if I did, I'd probably go after that eyewitness.
You're going after that eyewitness. You're going to intimidate them or their family or their kids. You don't have to commit a crime. All you have to do is get a message across that says, you testify against me and put me in prison forever, your family's done. And right now, judges don't have to do that because of that Dubose decision by the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. So voting yes on issue one literally will tell the judge you must consider witness safety, public safety and the criminal defense record. Like if this is your first offense or if this is the 6th time you've been before a judge and a jury on a felony charge. If you're a criminal, habitual criminal, that should be considered before they issue bail. And if they want to give you a bail of $50,000 or $500,000, those things matter. And that's what issue 1 is about. So don't let anybody tell you that, there's a legitimate reason to vote no on issue 1. No reason whatsoever. Do not let this be ambiguous in your brain. Absolute must vote for public safety, yes, on issue 1.
And most law schools prior to that case that you mentioned that made its way to the Ohio Supreme Court taught that public safety was absolutely part of that consideration. So we're getting back to that. You want to hit issue 2 real quick? I think that's important.
That's another one. Somebody asked me that too and said, what do I do in issue 2? What does this really say?
Yes.
And it's very simple. You either want only citizens to be able to vote in Ohio elections or you want non-citizens, i.e. illegal aliens, to be able to vote in Ohio elections. Because there are some localities that want to say, well, these people might be undocumented, which is their, PC word for illegal. These undocumented people, they're working and they're paying taxes and they're subject to the laws. Why shouldn't they have a say in the local elections? Maybe not the federal ones, but in the local elections and the county elections or, the state elections. And that's what some people say. Those people are generally known as idiots. These are people who don't know any better and don't understand what the Constitution says. Only citizens can vote. All issue 2 does is it adds it into the Ohio Constitution that only Ohio citizens may vote in Ohio elections. It's just that simple.
It really is. And as you mentioned, the United States Constitution is very clear about federal elections and the fact that you have to be a citizen. Now, the impetus to this whole issue was in Greene County and in Yellow Springs, where there was a little bit of a contest where one locality said, look, we're going to allow these folks to vote. Secretary of State's office, according to my conversations with that office, talked with the Greene County Board of Elections and said, no, you put those aside. We're not counting those. And so they didn't, but then that was the impetus, right? They're like, well, the Ohio Constitution has some ambiguity. It's not crystal clear. This makes it crystal clear. If you're going to vote, you have to be a citizen.
Well,
so
I don't even know what the ambiguity was, but I'll take your word for it. It couldn't really be much more simple. The fact that we need to put everybody, make everybody vote for an amendment like that in an important election, taking time away from some of the other things is just insane to me. There's no... when I talk to virtually everybody, including Frank LaRose, no but one thinks this needs to be there. It does, though, sadly.
It does.
But the fact that we are debating whether or not non-citizens should vote in American elections or in Ohio elections in this case is just insane.
Well, and I think we have to call it what it is real quick. I want to sit down on this point for just a second because it's uber important. As the mainstream media traditionally does, as the progressives, in the Republican Party and the Democrats always do, they skirt the issue. They hold up a red herring and make it about something that it's not. If you've listened very closely, it was J.D. Vance, Tim Ryan, and in their second debate this came up. They'll kind of put it under the guise of replacement theory, right? Oh, white folks are talking about this racist, debunked theory that we're working to replace. It's not about working to replace anybody that's white or black or Hispanic. What it is it's going, look, we have an open border, and those people that are coming in, if they vote, that's not fair. That's illegal, number one.
It's unconstitutional.
It's unconstitutional. And by the way, one party that is supporting that will absolutely try to use that to their advantage. That has nothing to do with white replacement theory. It has everything to do with being a country and a people that abide by the law.
Right. But by the way, having said that, the great replacement theory is real. It's not debunked. It's real. And it's not white people who are saying it. It's Latino and Hispanic support, groups, sponsor groups, and African Americans who are saying that the goal is to replace Caucasians as the majority in the United States of America within the next 50 years or whatever it is. And one of the ways they're going to do that is they're going to import people who are black and brown people by allowing them to cross the border illegally. And then they're basically just going to be in a breeding race with the white population who's going to have babies the fastest and have more than the other. That's what they say. That's not what we're sitting here and saying. And by the way, I have never once spent 1 minute on my radio program in 25 years or 1 minute in my private life worrying, what if we're not the majority someday? No one I know, no white person I know has ever thought, what if there's not as many of us as there are of somebody else?
Look.
Ever. But this is what they are literally, they're writing articles about it. Jack, they're recording shows about it. Eventually they're going to outbreed us and there's going to be a change in demographic here. And then if somebody white points it out, they say, racist! You're talking about a great replacement theory and you want to keep black and brown people down as a result. That's crap. Kerrapp. Crap.
Bob, it's bogus and it's insulting. I don't care how many white people are in my neighborhood. I don't care how many white people are in my country. I care about equal justice under the law. I care about the 14th Amendment. I care about valuing people because we're made in God's image. That's what matters.
Sure.
And so to me, it's more about being the constitutional republic that we are. And that's, by the way, why Democrats will get off on this whole tangent of the democracy.
It's projection.
Yes,
they're
it is.
projecting what they believe on you and then blaming you for it. When you obviously everything you just articulated is the viewpoint of a patriotic conservative.
Well, and I think we're going to talk about Hochul in just a moment. She's doing the same thing. By the way, that's what's happening with polls. I heard that over the weekend. That oh my gosh, these partisan Republican groups are sponsoring these polls, and now you have all of this false information. I've dug in deep with a handful of elections. It is happening. And do you know what groups are being nefarious about it? It's the groups on the left. It's not the groups on the right.
Always.
And frankly, the groups that look like they're aligned with the right, do you know what they're about? They're about anti-Trump, anti-MAGA. They're the Lincoln Project type people.
Sure.
So, again, another example of the media carrying the water for progressives when pointing out things in other people that they're doing themselves.
Let's do that clip. Bruce, Kathy Hochul 1. I want people to see what they are saying because I think what you just told us, Jack, about the numbers in the Vance race against Ryan, I think are being replicated, maybe not to that size, but in races, the most important races all across this country. The Democrats know the red wave is coming, and they're trying to explain ahead of time why. Listen to Kathy Hochul's why, and then we'll respond to that.
The problem with Democrats, they're doing all this good stuff, right? We have a lot of accomplishments, but they just don't message the right way. The Republicans are better at the messaging.
Jack, there are times I just look at this and say, I just can't.
Bob,
Democrats have done a lot of great things, but they're just bad at messaging it. You own, lock, stock, and barrel, the mainstream media. You have every newspaper under your thumb. You have every network under your thumb. If you had positive things to message, they would message them for you. You don't have a message because you went from 1.2% inflation to 8.5%, now actually over 9% inflation. You went from energy independent and being a net distributor of energy, exporter of energy, to going to Saudi Arabia and going to Venezuela and saying, will you guys pump a little more and sell it to us, please? Mm-hmm. You're going from, strategic stockpiles being all-time highs to being 40-year lows. We can go on and on. You're going from a secure border to an open border. You're going from controlling fentanyl and human trafficking coming into this country to it coming across completely unchecked. You literally have no messaging. If you did, the mainstream media that carries your water, as you put it, would be messaging it for you.
And I would be remiss if I didn't miss this point. You're also the party aligned with big union dollars that's allowing Biden and Title IX changes in the U.S. Department of Education and Ohio schools to step in between a parent and a child. And we're going to write a story later this week. I'm not going off on that tangent, but you're the party that does that. And so not only is the mainstream media carrying their water, I didn't write the article. Look back at Molly Ball's article in Time magazine. It's been quoted a lot this week. But she refers to the cabal, the secret group of people who had the intention to get Joe Biden in the White House and Donald Trump out. And guess who sat down in that initial meeting? Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg. They own social media. They keep quiet any opposing view. So we have a lot we have accomplished. We just don't have the messaging. If you don't have the messaging right now, you are a complete and utter failure because you own all the means of distribution for messaging. And you shut up and silence and intimidate and arrest people who come against you. You are so full of dung.
Yeah, I brought up mainstream media, you brought up social media. Between the two of those, yes, they have all the messaging in the world. If you had something to sell, there's a reason why virtually every left-wing progressive candidate's ad that you have seen on TV is focused on one or two things. They're focused on abortion, because they're coming for your rights to kill your baby, or they're focused on democracy is on the ballot. You know, these election deniers, these January 6th insurrectionists, you know, these are the people, if you let them win, you know, democracy will die. That is all they have. They can't talk about the economy. Do you know? In fact, Bruce, let's hit this one. Let's hit the NBC clip. And let's talk about the economy. And let's talk about why it is that neither Tim Ryan nor Mark Kelly nor John Fetterman nor, just pick them. None of the Democrats running for either Senate or governor seats or whatever can talk about the economy and about it's not about messaging. And here's why. Listen.
And here's, to me, the number you probably ought to care about the most in this poll. The state of the U.S. economy. 81% tell us they're dissatisfied. This is the second highest number we've ever recorded. The last time it was this high was just before the 2010 election.
2010, which of course was coming out of, or actually, pretty much coming out of the Great Recession that started in 2007, 2008. 2010 was when we had what Barack Obama referred to as a shellacking. I think some 60 seats changed hands. It's when the Tea Party was born, if you recall. That's when this massive shift took place. This is the highest number of people who say they're dissatisfied with the economy since then, at 2010. 81%, Jack. So this is not a messaging problem. You can use social media, mainstream media. You can send carrier pigeons to every voter in America, and you've got nothing for the pigeons to carry. You've got nothing you can say about the economy or inflation because Americans are hurting.
Yeah, it's not a messaging problem, and it's also not, the other lie that they like to tell, that there is a very small, extreme group of people on the margin, right? They'll call them MAGA, ultra MAGA, whatever.
Yeah.
No, there are
semi-fascists.
Again, pointing at people and calling them something that they indeed are. They do have a messaging issue, though. I will tell you that every time Joe Biden steps on a stage and opens his mouth, they lose ground, and it's to me, when he stood up with that red backdrop with armed guard beside him and said what he said, and then was it again last week when he called basically half of America a threat to the democracy? And by the way, I know I'm splitting legal hairs here, but can we stop with that? I mean, we are a constitutional republic, which means that the Constitution is the highest level of authority, not the general public. Why is that important? Because mob mentality can be dangerous. If you don't believe me, pick up a history book, not revisionist history, a real history book, and look back. There are fundamentals, there are concepts, there are ways by which we can live to continue to prosper in this republic, but we have to get back to that.
Yeah, and I will often give the left a pass when they say, threat to democracy on the blah, 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 blah. When they use it in that way instead of a democracy, because we are a republic, we are not a democracy. Democracy, however, is the process by which we choose our representatives in our representative republic. We vote. We're going to vote. We vote tomorrow for the representatives in the Senate, the House, and blah, blah, blah. So we practice democracy in order to serve our republic, but we are not a democracy. Yeah. And for them to claim that democracy dies if you vote Republican because they're the ones who are the election deniers. Again, I could just sit here and pull up the RNC because they've compiled a nice 10-minute video of about every prominent Democrat in the United States of America today and over the last few years denying election results. Denying the Georgia results, denying the results in 2000, denying the results in 2016 when Trump beat Hillary. Everybody has denied elections when they lose. They've complained it wasn't fair, blah, blah, blah. But only Republicans who complain about 2020, for which there is ample evidence, by the way, of that fraud. They're the only ones that are threats to democracy.
Absolutely. Look, social proof and influence is one of the most powerful things in the world when you're talking about influencing groups of people, and they absolutely did that. They did that with social media. They did that by giving money to boards of election. In fact, I think is it 21 states now who have outlawed Zuckerbucks?
So, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So there was a lot going on. There were law changes in places like Pennsylvania. There were procedure changes in places like Pennsylvania and other battleground states that were not consistent with the constitutions in those respective states. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about the importance of rule by law. And I want to go back real quickly to what you're going to vote on tomorrow. There are some really important races. Chief Justice, you have Sharon Kennedy and Jennifer Brunner. You have Pat DeWine against Marilyn Zayas, Patrick Fisher taking on Terry Jamieson. And those are super important races because if any one of those loses, then the court flips. And I'm going to say two really important things. I've heard a lot of you say, look, I don't like Mike DeWine, and I'm never going to vote for Pat DeWine. I would encourage you to go back and read a decision that Pat DeWine has weighed in on. Most recently, take a look at the Redistricting Commission and the way that he and Sharon Kennedy wrote their dissenting opinions. I don't know that I can find a more conservative, well-thought, constitutional opinion than what Pat DeWine wrote. So if you are a conservative, I think Pat DeWine is the guy that you have to vote for. And here's something interesting that happens. If Kennedy beats Brunner and Fisher remains in office and DeWine remains in office, then that puts us in a situation where Sharon Kennedy's seat has to be filled, and Mike DeWine will then be responsible for appointing another member to the Supreme Court. So in that case, you would assume that the Republicans would have a 4-3 advantage. Yeah, extraordinarily important. I don't want to rehash it because, like I said, I'm going to have the three candidates. So we're talking about Fisher, DeWine, and Kennedy on my program tomorrow at 10 a.m. on WHK 1420. Wherever you're listening, it may be throughout Ohio. If you don't get it, it's WHKradio.com, so you can listen to it via the stream. Your point about DeWine, I just want to follow up on, too. I don't know if anybody in Ohio media has been harder on Mike DeWine than I have, and I know there are a lot of people that have. I am just disgusted by him. I will never forgive him, and I will never support him again. His son has nothing to do with him. His son, by the way, is also in a position that is very different than his. Mike DeWine is in the executive position right now. He is the governor. That's a different role altogether than that of a legislator, which is a very different role altogether than that of a jurist, which is what Pat DeWine is. Pat DeWine can't be like his dad from a position in which he does something entirely different, which is simply interpret law and the Constitution. That's all Pat DeWine does. Do not judge him by his father in any way, shape, or form. And as a matter of fact, I would dare say this. When Mike DeWine was in a position on the side of justice as an attorney general, he was much better than he is as a governor. I was much happier with Mike DeWine, the attorney general, than I am Mike DeWine, the governor. And that's a little bit closer to the positions of the court, right. Because of the association in the judiciary. Pat DeWine is an excellent associate justice. He needs to stay on that court, and to say nothing, of course, of Fisher and Kennedy, as we talked about. So. All right. Do you have something else, or do you want to get to where I want to go here? Let's get to where you want to go. I have two important things that I want to make sure we cover, but I think you're probably going to get right in the middle of one of them right now. When we started this episode of Talking Smack with Bob and Jack, I said a disgusting thing that might be happening in Dayton tonight. Jack and I have been talking smack at each other off the podcast before we started this, when we were talking to each other on the phone today, and when we sat down before we got the cameras working and everything. We have a very strong disagreement about this. First of all, what's going on in Dayton? It's going on right now. In fact, there's a ton of people probably watching it somewhere. And I'm looking for a text on it. So all right. Keep going. Yep. President 45 is in Ohio, and he's down in Dayton, and he's there for J.D. Vance. And he's there for Jerry Majewski, and he's there for Max Miller, and he's there for, all of these Ohio Republicans in these important races. Were you going to say someone else? Yeah, I was going to say Steve Shabbat. There you go. Going to say Gilbert. She's in it. Melissa Jessiata Gilbert, who will also join me tomorrow morning on my program. Tight race in 13. And there might be a couple others. I think you mentioned J.R. Majewski. I think he has a shot in that contest against Marcy Kaptur, who's been in office 3 decades. Since it began, I think. I think she was around when Ohio was formed. So what's wrong with that, you say? Well, nothing. Truthfully, nothing is wrong with that. That's okay. Good. I'm glad 45 has come to Ohio on the eve of the election to support Ohio candidates. Great. Use your platform. Use your status, your rock star celebrity status, President Donald J. Trump, to be here and shine a spotlight on these very important contenders in these very important races. But, Jack, why don't you tell everybody what you told me earlier today, that you are now monitoring to see if it's happening? So I got a text message this morning and started investigating it. I had a chance to talk to some former people that worked in the Trump White House and some people who are still closely connected to him today. And, we heard last week that Donald J. Trump may announce his candidacy for president in the 24 race, and that he might do it somewhere around the 14th after the midterms. Well, I heard today that he's going to do it tonight in Dayton, Ohio, on the stage. And several conversations, some of them I have to keep off the record, but here's my question was, is that really going to happen? And here's the response that was consistent with the folks I talked to. Number one, nobody knows that it's going to happen until it comes out of his mouth at that microphone, and nobody knows that he's not going to do it until he gets on the plane, sits down, and takes off. So Donald Trump does what he wants to do when he wants to do it. But one key person said to me, I'd bet that he does. I could be wrong. He might. I think strategically it makes sense. You don't like it. Let's talk about it.
You first.
Well, look, I said a couple of weeks ago to you, I said, if Donald Trump is going to run in 24, why would you not announce before the primary? Because some of these key races, J.R. Majewski, back then we thought, J.D. Vance, and I'm sure there are races all across the country where there are people who are just going to sit on their hands. If Donald Trump steps on stage the night before the general election and says, look, I'm running, I'm going to be your president in 24, you need to show up tomorrow and vote in U.S. senators, U.S. representatives, so that when I get in office in 24, we're going to undo in 2 years that what otherwise may have taken 4 or 8 or 12 years. We need to get this done. We're going to make America great again. We're taking this country back at warp speed. Strategically, I think it's a good move for the movement. You hate it.
I think it's a dick move. This country and this party and the conservative movement are not all about Donald Trump. If they are, we're sunk. Because there is nobody who is more divisive and nobody who is more reviled by independents and those on the left than he is. If he wants to run, fine, I'm cool. If he wants to announce after the midterms, fine, I'm cool. If he wants to get into a fight with Ron DeSantis after that, I'm cool. I will support whoever comes out of that primary, including Donald Trump. Donald Trump was a great president. He got some outcomes that were simply spectacular. I mean, seriously, he did more for more middle-class Americans and for more minorities, by the way, than Barack Obama did. I mean, in 3 years he did. And I say 3 because his last year was, of course, the COVID year, and it was just a hodgepodge of crap for everybody.
Can we agree he had one arm tied behind his back his whole presidency? My goodness, from the time he came down the stairs.
He had 2 arms tied behind his back, Jack.
For his inauguration.
He did. He was like
under
handcuffed.
total attack.
Yes. And he still did the things he did. He was attacked from the moment he got here. He didn't win legitimately. The election deniers on the left, Russia collusion made that happen. They were spying on him during his first year of in office. They tried to impeach him twice, once after he was already gone. I mean, yes, he had 2 hands tied behind his back, which makes what he did impossible to comprehend. It was phenomenal. And when he left office, he left us with $2 gas. He left us with 1.2% inflation. He left us as a net exporter of energy.
He didn't leave with $5 gas?
No. Ask Joe Biden. He left us with us out of the Paris Climate Accords. He left us out of the Iran nuclear deal. He left this country with a secure border and the lowest number of illegal border crosses we had in 4 decades. I mean, he literally did so many things that were just impossible for somebody to do. Hold on, I know you're breathing deep there. And that's fine. And if he wins the nomination to become the Republican candidate again, I will remind everybody of all of those things. But he can't come to Ohio tonight for J.D. Vance and Madison Jesse Otto Gilbert and J.R. Majewski and all the rest that you just mentioned and steal their thunder and make it all about him. I'm running for president again. Well, great. You can't wait 3 days? You can't, and what you said, Jack, what you said, it's a good strategic move because it's going to make people, they're already coming. You read the polls. The Republicans are already coming. It's going to be a red wave. The only thing his presence can do is reinvigorate the left to say, holy crap, everybody. This SOB made it official now. We can't let him come in 24 with a full-on Republican Congress.
All right, you're going to get
We
mad.
We got to come out here now.
I'm going to hold the mirror up, Bob, because you said at the front.
Do it.
You said at the front of the show that they can't get complacent and not vote. That would get them out to vote.
They're already coming, Jack. That's what I'm saying.
So
hold that mirror up, and I will look at it and say, you were right, France. Because guess what? They're coming, and they're coming strong. The numbers are not even. I mean, this is. You said to me earlier today. What was your prediction on the Senate race by the time it's all over with?
I think it's 53-47.
53-47. We're going to go from 50-50 to up 3 or up 6. I should say.
Which is massive.
I think it could be
plus
54.
19 or more.
I think it could be 54-46. I really do. They're coming, Jack. DeSantis is going to win huge. DeWine is going to win huge. Not that I compare the two very much. Tudor Dixon has a legitimate shot. I wanted to go to the governor's races. Kerry Lake is going to win.
Kerry Lake's going to win.
There's no question in my mind. Jack, the Republicans are already coming. They're riding that wave. They have been waiting for 2 years of Bidenomics, or Brandonomics, if you will, suffering at the gas pump, at the grocery store, at the clothing store, at the auto parts store, you name it, everywhere. And they have been waiting for this chance to stop this nonsense. They're coming. They don't need Donald Trump to make them come. And like I said, all this would do is I see a lot of guys getting really, really super popular that aren't me. I've got to change that. I'm me. I'm 45. Get the spotlight on me. I'm running in 2024. JD, stay to the side of the stage, will you please? Look at me. I'm running in 2024. That's a dick move. It's bad for Republicans. It's bad for all of us. He cannot make this all about himself. And that's what he did, Jack. 3 nights ago, he's in Pennsylvania. Let's play this. Bruce, this is clip number... it's Trump 1. It's Trump 1. It's the only Trump 1 we had to play. Listen to what Trump did. Now, mind you, before we play it, he's in Pennsylvania.
So it's Oz Fetterman.
He's in Pennsylvania for Oz. And he's in Pennsylvania for Mastriano. And what does he do while he's in Pennsylvania talking about those races? What does he do? He does this.
Trump at 71, Ron DeSanctimonious at 10%, Mike Pence at 7. Oh, Mike's doing better than I thought.
He slams Ron DeSantis, the most popular GOP governor in the country, the one that everyone is rallying behind. The one that everybody said, look at the job he did during COVID. Look at the job he did standing up to Disney and the groomers. Look at the job he did in recovering from the hurricane. I mean, record time. He had everybody ready to go, and the lights were back on and everything. I mean, he is killing it, and everybody knows it. And you know who knows it best of all? Donald Trump. He sees a guy here getting more popular by the day in Ron DeSantis, and so he's got to take a shot at him and call him sanctimonious. That just screams, no one is bigger than me, so remember that. Then he attacked Ted Cruz. Said Ted Cruz, man, he should have gone into the Supreme Court. You know how many of the members would have confirmed to get him into the court just to get him out of the Senate because they hate him so much? Why are you attacking Republicans?
Well, look, you can't separate the wheat from the chaff on this one. So with Trump's trade policy, with Trump's border policy comes Donald J. Trump. And by the way, we know that those things work. How do we know they worked? Because Tim Ryan has been forced to admit, yeah, I think border walls in some places make sense. I'm with Trump on trade. So obviously Trump policies worked. Trump, the man, really pissed a lot of people off. If you remember that first presidential debate between Trump and Joe Biden, if Trump would have kept his mouth shut and let Joe Biden dig his own hole, he probably would have had a better outcome. Although everything we know about that election, I'm not sure that it would have mattered. So a couple of really important points. He could be trolling us, Bob. Donald J. Trump is a master at trolling the media. And you know what's going to happen tonight? Guys like us, news stations all around are going to be talking about Trump in this rally, and it's going to get a lot of focus and attention on this race. Maybe that's the intent. Real quick.
How does that help, though?
Well, I don't think that it hurts. When is media attention bad when you're a politician?
When the media attention that you are drawing draws your opposition out in more force to try to stop this from happening.
all I've seen from newspapers, TV shows, and every talking head on the left for the past 6 months is Trump, 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 January 6th, Trump, 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 Trump.
True.
That's the only drum they're going to beat. So in my mind, he goes, well, you're going to beat the drum anyway. Here you go. Let me throw gasoline on that fire. Real quick.
But you still didn't answer the question as to how that helps. How does that help any of the candidates that are running? How does it help anybody that he goes to a stage for? Every Republican American.
It puts the thought in their mind that we just talked about. How many people do you think are going, you know what? This guy's going to run in 24, and we better get this upper and lower chamber filled with Republicans, because the day he takes office, I want him to start acting, and I want
crap. Kerrapp, crap, Jack. And here's why. Like I said, they already know that. And it's not because they need to set the table for Trump when he comes in. They need to do that because come January, if we don't do that, this country's over. This country is over. They will pass SB 1. They will federalize the elections. They will pack the court. They will add 2 more states to add more Democrat senators.
Gotta add something.
Won't matter if Trump is the president in 24 if that happens. But let me tell you something. What I see is as excited as the people riding their surfboards are and red waving up to the shore here to take this thing back, the Democrats are ticked. And you know what happens when you get ticked? You know what happens when you keep hearing that this wave is coming and you see numbers like the ones you read to us at the top of this podcast? You get depressed. Sad, angry, and depressed, and they're the ones who are going to stay home until they hear what? That orange son of a bitch.
Orange man bad.
Orange man bad is coming. We're coming. That can only invigorate the other side, Jack. We're already invigorated. And Donald J. Trump could have had the stage to himself on Friday. Let's just say Friday. We win both majorities tomorrow. We got, everything is going great guns. And now he says, by the way, come 24, you got to deal with me again. Everybody would explode. Great. But to do it now steals our own Republican thunder. And I'll say this one last time. There was one Republican in America 3 nights ago that was not criticizing Democrats and decided to criticize Republicans. And it was Donald Trump. Every other conservative American was ripping the Democrats, ripping Fetterman, the caveman, ripping Mark Kelly, ripping Katie Hobbs, ripping Gretchen Whitmer, ripping all of these Democrats and all of these important races, and supporting and uniting as the Republican Party has not had in a very long time. All united. There was only one person who was decided to use that time to rip his fellow Republicans. And it happens to be the leader of the party. It happened to be 45. Somebody explain to me how that makes sense. Make that make sense, that every Republican is cheering Republicans except one who's saying, sanctimonious Ron DeSantis. Wait, what?
It's Donald J. Trump. Hey, real quick, I've got to get this in before I forget. So, Brian Waskowski, you've asked a couple of times about issue 2. So let me make it simple. If you think that only citizens should vote, you vote yes on issue 2. If you think that other people who are not citizens should vote, you vote no on issue 2.
So people are still confused by that. And by the way, I'm trying to follow on the iPad screen in front of me here, and I hope nobody thinks I'm looking down because I'm not looking at you and listening to you, but I'm trying to pull the comments up here. And on the iPad, it's kind of funky. It just shows our screen. And I can't bring comments up, but we wanted people to ask questions about this, and we've got about 10 minutes left, Jack, in the hour. So can you pull up questions? Because I can't. I see 116 comments there, and I can't access them the way my screen is.
Yeah, let me see what we can do here.
Yeah, I really want to answer what people have to say or respond to their comments if it's not asking a question.
By the way, I don't think Trump announces tonight.
You told me you thought he would.
I said I think that he could. I don't think he will.
Yeah, he shouldn't. He shouldn't. And you want to know why? Because he's smart enough to know it would be a dick move to do it. It would be sticking a finger in the eye of J.D. Vance. Instead of stepping up here and saying, our next senator, J.D. Vance, and our next congressman, Max Miller, and another next congressman, Jeremy Jiske and Madison. It would be like, y'all are minor side characters in my production here. All right? Get out of the way of the star. Nobody stands in the middle of the stage with Johnny Carson. He's there alone. The supporting staff stay off to the side. And that's what it would be if he decided to say, I'm the guy tonight.
Let me hit this real quick. As it stands right now, Ohio has 15 congressional seats because we lost one due to population. And it looks like, as I run all the numbers, it's going to be 12-3 Republicans. I think the close race to look at for an incumbent is Steve Shabbat with Greg Landsman in District 1.
Yep.
I think Shabbat's up by about 5, but we'll see. Some people think that race is tighter. Another race to really take a look at and keep an eye on is in 13, and we've already talked about that, Amelia Sykes and Madison Gilbert. I'm showing Gilbert up by 4. I just talked to a couple of insiders who said, "Nah, I think Amelia Sykes is in the lead in that race."
That race scares me.
Yeah,
I feel.
Well, that's
I don't
Tim,
know.
that's Tim Ryan's district.
I know,
and that would be a flip for Republicans. That's why.
But it's not the district that Ryan won all these times because of the
That's
redistricting.
right.
It changed
It's a
things.
different
So
number.
there are a lot more
Same number,
conservative-leaning areas that are included in that district.
You got it.
Same number, but not the same people.
And similar, I think, with Anthony Gonzalez and Max
Yeah.
Miller. So Max Miller is going to win that race going away, I believe. But here's the one I want to talk about: 9, J.R. Majewski, Marcy Kaptur. That might be a 4-point race. I think that race is winnable for J.R. Majewski. I think J.R. Majewski has gotten the brunt of Kaptur, what she did. I think it was a couple of decades ago. She pulled the same thing with a competitor that had her against the ropes. She pointed to his military history, raised some questions. She tried the same thing with Majewski. Majewski and I had personal conversations. We wrote a story about what happened, what didn't happen. We actually got out in front of the Associated Press, who tried to run a hit piece on him, and I think that it ended up helping Majewski.
It did.
And
you wrote that about the same time as I interviewed him, and I learned a lot from your story actually on him to try to clarify and clear up what Kaptur was trying to do to him. But yeah, she's a dirty campaigner, and the sad truth of the matter is, Jack, and you know this, is dirty campaigning works. How do you think she's been there for 150 years?
Yeah, hey, look, it's behavioral psychology. People act to avoid pain or pursue pleasure, and if they feel like, oh my gosh, I don't want to elect somebody that's going to embarrass me, somebody who lied about their service record, which he didn't. I mean, he was in battle. He was deployed. He had some folks speak out in support of that, and that race is going to come down to turnout in certain areas.
Right.
If there's a large turnout, I think in like the city of Toledo, I think that favors Kaptur. I think if the suburban areas of that district turn out, I think Majewski upsets her tomorrow night.
Jack, we got like 5 minutes or so based on what time we started, and if we go over a little over an hour, that's okay. I want to get a few of these in. I got people are. This is just kind of funny. People are commenting on the screen on how I can see their comments on the screen, not realizing though that if I can't see your comments on the screen, you can. So thank you to Mark, who said, touch the blank screen, Bob. And I couldn't see that because I didn't have this touch. But Bruce told me what's going on here. So Jennifer says, love the live podcast. Thank you, Jennifer. We do too. Rachel says, agree, Bob. I think that's a horrible move. He's going to divide people when this is the time conservatives have to unite. Completely agree. Crystal. No, not Crystal. Julie. Him taking a pot shot at DeSantis was low. Stephanie, yeah, that jab at DeSantis was not cool at all. Dick move. Debbie, sorry, Jack, Bob is right. Jennifer, Republicans made themselves look bad for a very long time. They didn't need Trump for that. I agree with that. And again, I don't want this to sound like a pile on Trump. Trump did phenomenal things, as you said, with handcuffs on. But again, there's a time and a place for everything. And what is the time and place in Dayton tonight? And that's to celebrate these candidates so they go win tomorrow. Nothing else. And it looks like, from what your sources in Dayton are saying, that's going to be the case. Right?
We'll see. I don't know.
Now you still think he might do it?
No, I don't think he will. I don't think
Okay.
he will. I see a question here. It looks like Brian's asking, any chance Dems let Walker win in the cheating epicenter? Well, look, I talked again Friday. I had a conversation with Chief Pollster at Trafalgar. What a great guy, by the way. I really appreciate Robert Cahaley. And he said that race has turned. The tide has turned for Herschel Walker, and his prediction was that he wins without a runoff. There's an iconic coach in that area who passed away.
Vince Dooley,
and Vince Dooley's dying wish, or command, I guess, for Georgians, was to vote Herschel Walker into office. And there was essentially a media blackout due to that. That was the messaging for several solid days. And he predicts that Walker wins that by, so Walker would need 50 plus one, right? 50% plus one vote. I think Walker gets it done in Georgia.
I hope to God you're right. And by the way, I don't have all the questions I need answered about Herschel Walker because some of these late allegations. but they're just so dirty and they're just so salacious, and it's what the left does so much. I can't believe any of it, but I just hope they're not true, because a lot of that stuff would undermine his credibility. But having said that, Raphael Warnock is an absolute anti-American racist snake in the grass. I don't want him anywhere near. Even if the allegations against Herschel Walker were true, I'd say, you know what? We all have warts, and we all have a lot of things in our past that don't define who we are now. And I would say, let's go forward. It's still better than Raphael Warnock. Well, but I hope you're right, because I fear a runoff there.
Look, and I've been in the eye of that storm. I've been under that microscope personally, and I can tell you, as somebody who prizes facts, as somebody who prizes objectivity, and being able to let somebody tell the entire side of the story that needs to be told, that's not what happens in these races. When the media carries the water for you, if there's any hint of impropriety, it gets blown completely out of proportion, and it gets reported over and over. Well,
particularly if it's on a Republican.
You've got that right, 100%.
Jack, the comments I read before were the only ones that I can see. Otherwise, I mean, I wasn't just reading all the ones that said they agreed with me. I can't get any more up here. Do you have something else? Questions or comments? I mean, if you've got a better list there, because you've got the full laptop open, and I can't seem to make it show on my screen on my iPad. Take a couple. It'll only load, says Bruce, our technical guy. When you have it up. Okay. I want to see 116 comments, which is probably more than that now, but I can't. So, Jack, if you can, anything you want to share?
I think we've all, I think we've hit most of them. Although there is another interesting point, again, from Brian. He said, look, Trump was actually trolling people saying DeSantis instead of Trump. He hates when people say anyone instead of him. He has nothing to do with
that. Was my point.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That was exactly what my point was. He doesn't like when anybody else gets nearly as popular as he is.
Yep.
And again,
so let's take a look at,
and I know what's going to happen here. By the way,
yep.
If he runs and wins the nomination, and I go start, balls to the wall for Trump, people are going to say I was just like J.D. Vance, and I didn't like him before, the primaries or whatever. No, I do like him, and I love what he did for this country, but I want him to do things right, and I want him to support other Republicans and grow that way rather than tear them down in order to shine his own star. That's all I want.
So I want to take a look at these real quick. It looks like they're showing Oz by about 2 in Pennsylvania. So that would be a GOP hold. New Hampshire, Hassan, 0.3. So that's neck and neck.
Toss up.
Kelly is a half point. So some people are very much believing that Masters is going to win that race.
Me too. I'm one of them.
And that would be a GOP pickup. Walker.
I think when Kerry Lake's turnout comes out there are going to be so many people who vote for Masters and that Kelly is not going to see it coming.
It's a done deal. Walker would be a pickup. Lex Salt in Nevada would be a pickup. And the rest, at one point they were saying Wisconsin's really in trouble. Johnson's got a big lead there. That's going to be a Republican hold.
It better.
Bud in North Carolina is
that's one
8.
radical extremist.
Yep.
SOB.
Florida, Rubio, they were beating that drum for a while. Rubio's up 11-7, and again, Vance is up by 12.
Good.
So,
and what's DeSantis up by over Chris? Isn't that like a 10 or 11 also?
Yes, that was. I can look it up. Give me just a second here.
Yeah, I think it's okay. I think it's a pretty comfortable margin, but
it was a very comfortable margin.
And that's what a lot of other people said too last night. I went on Twitter last night. By the way, follow me on Twitter. I rejoined new Twitter in the hopes that it's going to be better. And by the way, I think it is. Whoopi Goldberg quit today. Whoopi Goldberg made her announcement and that she's no longer going to be on Twitter. She announced it on TV, and then she announced it on Twitter. And then after about an hour or so of miss you, going to miss you, don't leave, which she did for her own ego, she actually did deactivate her account. So, and also Elon Musk banned forever Kathy Griffin. Not for, now this is important. I know we got to wrap here. One of the things, and one of the reasons I quit Twitter nearly 4 years ago and gave up 36,000 followers, whatever it was. One of the reasons I quit is because they would not allow free speech. They were banning people for saying things like, I think the COVID shots are bad, whatever. And now the left is saying, oh, what is it any better now that Elon, he's banning people like Kathy Griffin. Where's her free speech? That is not why he banned her.
No, it's not.
Impersonating other people and saying things that people might believe were said by the other person.
It's actually a crime, by the way.
Yes, it is. It's defamatory, It could be slanderous. The point is impersonating somebody else publicly and thus trying to harm their reputation by saying things that would be attributed to them. That's not free speech. That's criminal behavior, and that is absolutely deserving of a ban. So he didn't boot Kathy Griffin because Kathy Griffin said, Elon Musk sucks. He booted Kathy Griffin because Kathy Griffin created a burner account and called herself Elon Musk.
Elon Musk.
And pretended to be her. And if you're not looking at him, I mean, and if you're not looking closely to see what the @ is underneath it, you could think that it is actually Elon Musk.
Yep.
And so he booted her. So anyway, Twitter is, I think, coming around a little bit. There's some changes that are being made. And as a matter of fact, Elon Musk himself, Jack, you can respond to this to wrap maybe. Elon Musk himself said, by the way, I believe that this republic functions best when there is shared power rather than universal or unilateral power. And he said, because of that, I am urging people to vote Republican for the majorities here because the president is already a Democrat. Then after he followed it up and said, by the way, to the left screaming, he's some conservative, he said he's voted Democrat his entire life until now. So
isn't that interesting?
That's a pretty strong statement right there. I have voted Democrat my entire life, but I won't now, and I'm encouraging other people not to because unilateral power by the Democrats is going to be bad for this country.
Yeah, so gridlock for the sake of gridlock is asinine.
Agreed.
I will argue that point to my grave. You do what
but
you have to do in every situation.
You don't believe that here, though, do you?
No, I think that look.
I'll take gridlock over 100% leftist,
I'll take gridlock
progressive,
over 100%
socialist
leftist.
America.
Yes, but in 24,
Yeah.
I would like to see the needle move toward the Constitution,
Right.
toward our roots. That's what's important to me. Two other things. DeSantis is up 12 on Christ.
Wow, good.
And Donald Trump has not taken the stage yet, but his whole family is there.
This thing started at 5 o'clock, right?
Yep.
That's 3 hours ago. He still hasn't taken the stage?
No, but his whole family is there. So read into that what you will.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Oh, yes. Thank you
What do you
so
got?
much.
What do you got?
Give me just a second. So this entire podcast.
Are you going to make me smash things in here right now? Are you going to?
Well, Bob. No. We'd like to thank the Freedom Foundation.
Yes, we would.
The Freedom Foundation.
And yes, we should.
Is a very kind sponsor of this podcast. We appreciate what they're doing and giving teachers the education and the opportunity to opt out from putting their dollars toward the National Education Association and Ohio Education Association. So freedomfoundation.com. Thank you.
Did you do that from memory?
Yeah.
That's impressive. I
Thanks.
like it. Well done. And by the way, if you would like to join them and be a sponsor of this podcast, by all means, contact us on our Facebook pages. We would certainly love to talk to you. In all seriousness, we want this to become something that is important and impactful for people. We're not doing it for our own fun here, although it is kind of fun to talk smack. But this is an expensive endeavor. It is laborious. It is time intensive, and it's costing us money. And we would like to keep it going because we think it can have some value, and that's what we're here for. So thank you, everybody. This has been the preview midterm 2022 edition of Talkin' Smack. Wednesday, we're back, right?
Wednesday, we're back.
And that's the review edition in which we either celebrate the restoration of constitutional principles in this country, or we try to figure out how we survive a socialist nightmare.
No matter what, if you haven't already, get to the polls tomorrow and vote. Get there and vote.
And vote.
Please do it.
Vote red. He's still semi-journalist over here, so he's just telling you to vote, which is a positive thing, but I don't give a crap. I don't give a crap. Vote red. Vote all the way up and down the ballot. Vote red, 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 red. That's all I can tell you if you want to save this republic. Peter Kirsanow is fond of saying it does not matter if it's the dog catcher's race. Do not vote for a Democrat. Any little tiny in that they gets expanded upon, and when they get expanded upon, that's when the Constitution starts to shrink just a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more.
One other thing.
Don't trust them, ever.
Do not bypass your state Board of Education election. There are, I believe, 5 of 11 elected officials are on the ballot, and I'm telling you what's going on in our public schools. We're going to expose that even more in the coming months. And if you really want to make a difference, do all of your research tonight. Go to the Ohio Department of Education website, find your district, do your research. That race is important because those kids are our future.
Sarah McGurvey is running in that race in District 2 for the Ohio Board of Election. That was mine. That was on my ballot. I voted for her over Teresa Fetter, and I strongly encourage everybody to do that too. All right, that's it. That's all the time we have for this episode. But again, we're coming back on Wednesday, so we're looking at 48 hours away. We'll be back with a review of what happens on Tuesday. Do the right thing. Vote red. We are talking smack. I'm Bob.
And I'm Jack.
See you next time.